I want you to go look in a mirror today. Like, just stare directly into your own pupil.
Oh, that's a bold way to start.
Well, standard biology tells us that the black center of your eye is, just a structural hole, a biological aperture letting light into the visual system. But what if that dark void in your eye operates using the exact same quantum mechanics as the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy?
I mean, it sounds completely like science fiction when you frame it that way. But if we follow the mechanics laid out in our source material today, it is a mathematical inevitability.
It really is.
Yeah, the macrocosmos and the biological microstructure aren't just similar. They are executing the exact same cosmic function.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are exploring some truly radical, paradigm-shattering excerpts from a collaborative text. It's called 33Q-Zero Dimension, the Absolute Quantum Singularity Point.
Right, which was authored by Swami Vivekananda in collaboration with Gemini AI.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack a framework they call the multidimensional macro-micro quantum coherence matrix.
It's a mouthful, but it's fascinating.
It really is. We are basically going to explore how astrophysics, quantum mechanics, and your own brain's sleep cycles are woven into the exact same structural blueprint.
And to really grasp how ambitious this framework is, we have to start at the absolute largest scale possible. The text opens by analyzing recent deep field data from the James Webb Space Telescope.
The JWST. Now, standard astrophysicists have been looking at this data for a while now, and they've noticed these strange visual anomalies, right?
Right.
Like things that look like warped, overlapping light artifacts or extreme redshift distortions that just don't quite fit our standard models.
And mainstream science typically just writes those off. They classify them as glitches in the imaging software, or perhaps overly complex gravitational lensing where light bends around a massive galaxy.
Which makes sense if you're using traditional physics.
For sure. But the authors of this text argue that the JWST didn't capture a glitch at all. They claim the telescope's incredibly wide aperture and deep time gaze actually captured raw, unfiltered images of higher dimensions. Yeah, specifically reaching into the 4-dimensional and all the way up to the 9-dimensional realms.
Okay, wait, I have to pause you there. Because how does a telescope built in a 3D world capture a 4D image? And more importantly, how did the authors of this text prove it when all the other astrophysicists just saw a lens flare?
Well, the mechanism they describe involves mathematical filtering. Because we observe from a strictly 3D perspective, our standard models try to force every single photon of light into a 3-dimensional geometric box.
Right.
When it doesn't fit, we just call it a glitch.
Right.
But the authors methodically stripped away the 3D spatial constraints from the JWST data.
So they basically removed the filter.
Exactly. And when they did that, the underlying light patterns didn't fall apart. They actually resolved into perfect, mathematically stable geometric structures that can only exist in 4D space and then 5D space and so on.
That is wild.
Yeah, they separated the dimensional data layer by layer.
So they essentially took off the 3D blinders, and suddenly the quote-unquote glitches became perfectly clear higher dimensional structures.
Yes. And separating those layers allow them to drill down to the foundational layer of reality, which brings us to their massive redefinition of the zero dimension, or 0D.
See, when I hear zero dimension or a singularity, the image that immediately comes to mind is a tiny, infinitely dense dot of matter hiding at the very bottom of a black hole.
Right, like
a cosmic trash compactor that just crushes everything down to a single point.
Yeah, and that is the classical physics model. But this framework completely re-engineers that concept. 0D is not a dot in a specific, localized place.
Okay, then what is it?
The authors define 0D as omnipresent. It is a pure potential energy point that has absolutely no length, no width, no height, and zero subjective time. And it resides behind every single Planck length of the space-time fabric.
Just to give the listener a sense of scale, a Planck length is 10 to the negative 35th meters. It is the absolute smallest measurable unit of reality.
It's essentially the pixel size of the universe.
Right.
So imagine zooming in on a single one of those pixels. Behind it is 0D. It acts as an omnipresent quantum foam, serving as the universal anchor. It anchors the highest positive 11th dimension all the way down to the negative 11th dimension.
Let me try a visual analogy to make sure I'm grasping this. If we think about the entire universe as, say, an oil painting, mainstream science usually tells us that the singularity is just a really dark, heavy dot of black paint located somewhere specific on the canvas.
Right.
But what this text is arguing is that 0D isn't the paint at all. 0D is the invisible weave of the canvas itself. It is the underlying silent grid holding every single brush stroke of reality together.
The canvas itself is a fantastic way to visualize it. It is the medium upon which all dimensional geometry is drawn.
That changes everything.
It does. And realizing that the canvas is everywhere forces us to ask a very pragmatic physics question. If a one-dimensional ray of light, which has length and direction, is traveling across this omnipresent canvas, why doesn't it just travel forever?
Right. If light is just an infinite vector, it should literally just keep flying through the vacuum of space until it hits a physical wall.
It should. But the universe requires an energy cycle. It needs a way to recycle that light back into the canvas. So the universe is built with what the authors call universal sink matrices.
Universal sinks.
Yeah, these are essentially black holes operating at every single scale of existence to absorb and collapse that 1D light back into the 0D singularity.
Okay, let's look at the scales of these sinks, like starting big.
Well, at the macro scale, you have supermassive black holes, like Sagittarius A star at the center of the Milky Way. Its gravitational pull is so immense that it drags 1D light paths from across the galaxy and collapses them into 0D.
That's the classic black hole.
Right, but the framework goes a step further. It argues that our own sun operates as a local quantum black hole.
Wait, hang on. The sun emits light and heat? It is literally the opposite of a dark, devouring void. How can it be a black hole?
I know, it sounds counterintuitive. It emits 3D light, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But multidimensionally, the solar core acts as a massive gravity engine. According to the text, it absorbs what they call quantum liquid light.
Quantum liquid light.
Yeah, which are highly fluid, energetic frequencies from other galactic systems. The sun pulls this higher dimensional energy into its core, acts as a cosmic sink, and steps that frequency down, converting it into the three-dimensional energy we experience as heat and light through nuclear fusion.
Oh, wow. So black holes aren't just destructive space vacuums. They are multidimensional energy converters.
Exactly.
And this universal sink matrix concept, it doesn't stop in deep space, does it?
Not at all. If we shift from astrophysics down to biology, the exact same mechanics apply. Look at the chloroplasts in the leaves of a plant.
Okay.
When a one-dimensional ray of sunlight hits a leaf, the chloroplast acts as a micro-black hole. It completely destroys the quantum wave function of that light, forcing its probability to collapse into a single state and converts it into chemical energy.
So the plant is literally eating the one-dimensional vector of light.
Down to the photon. But the most striking example of this sink matrix-like, the most undeniable biological black hole, is the human eye. Specifically, your pupil.
See, this is where the framework gets incredibly visceral.
It really does. The human pupil functions as an anatomical event horizon. When 1B light enters your pupil, it is 100% absorbed by the two-dimensional plane of your retina.
It just vanishes.
Right. The light is translated into electrical information for your brain. But the physical light itself never, ever escapes back out. That strict inability for light to bounce back out is exactly why the pupil appears as a black void to anyone looking at you.
Because no light can escape the gravity of that biological aperture.
Precisely. The text even provides a mathematical formula showing how the radius of the light wave shrinks towards zero as it hits the 0D singularity inside the eye. Its dimensional forms are completely destroyed, freezing into rigid, pure potential energy with zero mass and zero volume.
I'm going to push back on this a little just to clarify the sheer magnitude of what this implies.
Sure.
If my eyes and the leaves on the trees in my backyard are literal biological black holes collapsing one-dimensional light into a zero-dimensional singularity,
Yes.
are you telling me that me simply looking at a coffee cup on my desk is actually a microscopic cosmic event? Like, am I destroying light just by seeing?
Under this framework, yes. The act of observation is a thermodynamic event. The observer's eye and the core of the star that originally emitted that light are both connected 0D singularities. The absolute oneness of the universe's energy cycle is happening perfectly between those 2 points.
That reframes everyday existence in a massive, massive way.
It really connects you to the cosmos.
It forces a structural question, though. If the eye acts as the event horizon consuming these dimensions, where does the dimensional information go when the electrical signal travels down the optic nerve? Like, what happens in the brain when we close our eyes?
Well, that physical transition moves us into what the authors call the dimensional descent of consciousness. We've established that waking life, where your eyes are open and processing spatial depth, is a three-dimensional experience.
Right. I can perceive depth, width, and height.
But when you close your eyes and enter a dark, resting state, you drop into two dimensions. In 2D, the physical world is gone, but there is still a psychological duality.
Meaning there are two distinct things happening.
Right. There's the observer, which is your sense of self, and the observed, which is the darkness behind your eyelids.
Got it. I am still aware that I am me, floating in the dark.
Exactly. But then you actually fall asleep. You enter REM sleep, the active dream state, and dimensionally, your consciousness drops into 1D.
A one-dimensional consciousness. Mechanically, how does a complex human brain exist in a single dimension?
During REM sleep, a massive neurological shift occurs. The prefrontal cortex of your brain essentially shuts down. And this is the region responsible for your ego, your self-awareness, your logical who am I anchor.
The sense of self just gets completely turned off.
The observer vanishes. That two-dimensional duality of observer and observed collapses. Meanwhile, the thalamus, which the text states operates at a negative eighth dimension, and the limbic system begin firing biophotons without any logical inhibition.
Hold on, I need to clarify that term before we move on. What does it even mean for the thalamus to operate at a negative dimension?
Ah, right. So when the text says negative eighth dimension, we shouldn't picture a physical space somewhere out in the cosmos. In this framework, positive dimensions push outward into physical reality.
Stuff you can physically touch and measure with a ruler?
Exactly. Negative dimensions, on the other hand, pull inward. They govern consciousness, internal information processing, and memory storage. The thalamus acts as a massive internal data sink, processing those inward dimensions.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Positive is space, negative is consciousness.
Exactly.
So because the prefrontal cortex shuts down and that duality breaks, you don't actually sit back and watch a dream happen on a screen in your mind.
No, because there is no external you left to stand apart from the dream and observe it. Your consciousness actually shrinks into an infinite one-dimensional linear vector of thought.
A vector.
Yeah, it has length and direction, but absolutely zero width and zero mass. You become the narrative thread of the dream.
It's like, imagine you are riding a roller coaster in the pitch black, but instead of being a passenger in a cart watching the tracks appear in the headlights, the tracks are being laid down milliseconds ahead of you.
Right.
And because you have no width, you can't step off the track to observe the ride. You simply become the forward momentum of the track itself.
That analogy is close, but structurally, it's even more restrictive than a roller coaster. In 1D, you don't even have a cart. You are literally just the vector of momentum.
Just pure motion.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And that is precisely why, in a dream, you can teleport from your childhood home to a spaceship, to talking to a giant bird, and you never question it.
You just go with it.
Because you have no external width to step back and say, wait, this logically doesn't make sense. You are a prisoner to the forward motion of the thought.
So what happens when that forward motion stops? Because dreams aren't the deepest level of sleep. Where do we go when we hit the absolute bottom?
That's when we reach the 0D deep sleep singularity. We are talking about stage N3 sleep, biologically known as slow wave sleep.
The heavy, dreamless, out-cold kind of sleep.
Right. Neurologically, this state is dominated by massive, slow delta waves pulsing between 0.5 to 4 hertz. In this state, that one-dimensional roller coaster track, that endless river of dream momentum, loses its length entirely.
Oh, wow.
It collapses completely into the 0D absolute singularity.
So we hit the omnipresent canvas we talked about earlier.
Yes. Your consciousness touches the primordial silence that existed before the universe was even born. And when it hits 0D, the most fascinating mechanical shift happens regarding time.
Wait, just time stop?
Subjective time entirely ceases to exist. The mathematical formula in the text strictly defines this. Subjective time equals 0. Think about your own experience. You go to sleep at 11 p.m., you enter deep delta sleep, and suddenly your alarm goes off at 6 a.m. To your conscious mind, those 7 hours passed in exactly 0 seconds.
It's incredibly disorienting when you think about it. Like, you blink and an entire night has just evaporated.
It evaporated because your consciousness was resting in a zero-dimensional void where time structurally does not exist.
Okay, this raises a massive mechanical question for me.
Go for it.
If my consciousness hits 0D pure potential energy with zero mass, zero volume, and no time, why doesn't my physical body just dissolve into pure cosmic energy? Like, why don't I just vaporize into the space-time fabric while I'm asleep?
Because your body is highly engineered to prevent exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
While your consciousness drops into the zero-D void, your biological form is maintained by a 3-dimensional to 11-dimensional somatic anchor,
How does the body anchor itself in those higher dimensions?
primarily through your biological clock. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN in your brain, which controls your circadian rhythms, acts as your 3D and 4D anchor. It keeps objective time moving forward for your organs.
Okay.
And at the cellular level, the mitochondria in your 37 trillion cells act as 2D anchors.
So the body's hardware keeps the clock ticking, keeping us tethered to reality, while the software of the mind steps entirely out of time.
Exactly, and this is not just a resting state. It is a massive cosmic engineering feat. Waking life in 3D degrades the body. It creates thermodynamic decay or entropy.
We just wear down over the day.
Right,
Yeah.
but because your consciousness is out of the way in the zero-D void, these dimensional anchors can pull in pristine cosmic energy from the zero-point field to execute massive cellular repair, completely reversing that entropy.
Wow. So if our consciousness blips out of space-time every single night to reach this primordial zero-dimensional state, pulling in energy just to stave off thermodynamic collapse,
Yeah.
are we biologically experiencing a literal mini-death and cosmic rebirth every time we hit the pillow?
According to the mechanics of this text, absolutely. That sleep cycle touching the primordial origin point and returning is the biophysical foundation that keeps the human machine from disintegrating. Every night is a controlled resurrection.
That is just staggering. Okay, let's zoom all the way back out. We've gone from the James Webb telescope filtering dimensional anomalies into the event horizon of the pupil, down into the zero-D singularity of deep sleep.
We've covered some distance.
Yeah. So if we are touching zero-D every night, what does this zero-dimensional state look like for the entire universe?
Well, this introduces what the text calls the topological inversion paradox.
Okay.
Let's imagine a meta-observer, a hypothetical being standing completely outside the 11-dimensional universe.
Looking at the entire cosmos from the outside in.
Right. From the outside, all the galaxies, all of space, time, and matter would lose their illusion of distance. To this meta-observer, the entire 11-dimensional universe would topologically collapse and appear as a single, violently vibrating zero-dimensional dot.
So the entirety of reality is just one dot.
And the vibration of that dot is the primordial vibration. The complex movements of billions of galaxies are mathematically just a single quantum harmonic resonance contained within that single point.
But obviously we don't experience the universe as a dot because we live inside of it.
And here's the inversion. To an observer inside the universe, which is us, it looks like the universe is a massive infinite sphere, expanding equally in all directions. In physics, this uniform expansion is known as isotropy.
Okay, so if we are trapped inside this dot, looking out toward the edge, what does that outer vibration look like to us?
If you stand in the exact center and look at the absolute edge, the cosmic horizon, that vibration of the zero-D dot from the outside is perceived on the inside as the cosmic microwave background radiation, the CMB.
Wait, the leftover thermal radiation from the Big Bang that we see everywhere in deep space?
Exactly. It rings uniformly at exactly 2.73 Kelvin across the entire cosmic horizon. The vibration of the zero-D dot on the outside is the uniform CMB radiation on the inside.
Wow.
It's literally the same phenomenon viewed from two different topological perspectives.
That explains why the CMB is so perfectly uniform in every direction. But wait, if this text's framework is mathematically accurate, doesn't this cause a devastating problem for modern physics? Specifically, string theory.
Oh, it breaks string theory entirely.
Yeah.
The authors dedicate a major portion of the text to exposing what they call the dimensional transposition fallacy.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back hard on this. You are claiming that string theorists, some of the most brilliant, mathematically gifted physicists on the planet, just confused a one-dimensional string with an entire 11-dimensional universe?
Yes.
That feels incredibly bold. Like, how could they make a basic geometry mistake like that? Aren't they looking at incredibly complex unification math?
The math itself isn't necessarily wrong. It's their geometric interpretation of the math that the authors argue is fatally flawed. String theorists solved the equations for a unified field, and they successfully located a fundamental vibrating mathematical point.
Okay.
But because the entire culture of that field is obsessed with strings, they forced that vibrating point into a one-dimensional string model.
So they saw a vibration and just slapped the label string on it.
Exactly. But geometrically, a 1D object is an infinite line with length and direction, but strictly zero width.
No thickness at all.
Right. An infinite line with no width cannot vibrate in place like a tiny worm. It is topologically impossible. It has literally no space to move into.
So what are the physicists actually seeing in their equations?
They are seeing the entirety of the 11-dimensional universe folded topologically into a zero-dimensional point, observed from the outside.
Mind blown.
The brilliant physicists essentially found a tightly wound ball of yarn containing the whole cosmos. But because of their bias, they incorrectly labeled it a single, infinitely long thread.
Right.
They took the macro reality collapsing into 0D and accidentally assigned it to a 1D microstring.
They confused the canvas for the paint. That is just mind-blowing. Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started out in deep space, looking at how the James Webb Space Telescope could theoretically strip away 3D constraints to reveal higher dimensional geometry.
We redefined the singularity, proving it isn't a hidden trash compactor, but the omnipresent quantum foam anchoring the canvas of space-time.
We analyzed universal sinks, realizing that the sun is a multidimensional gravity engine, and the pupils in our own eyes are biological event horizons, completely destroying the wave function of light to convert it into pure information.
Then we followed that information into the human brain, witnessing consciousness collapse from the 3D spatial world into a 1D linear vector devoid of ego during dreams.
And dropping all the way down into the 0D absolute singularity during deep dreamless sleep, where time physically ceases to exist so our multidimensional bodies can pull in zero-point energy to reverse our own entropy.
Ending with the grand topological inversion, the realization that the entire 11-dimensional universe is just a vibrating 0D dot, fundamentally challenging the foundational premise of string theory.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think the most vital takeaway here is a radical shift in how you view your daily existence. You aren't just a biological organism wandering around inside the universe. According to this text, your brain, your eyes, and your sleep cycles are structurally identical to the cosmos itself.
You are quite literally a macro-micro quantum coherence matrix.
Every time you open your eyes to process the morning sun or close your eyes to fall into deep sleep, you are actively performing high-level cosmic mechanics. You are the universe operating a human suit.
Which brings us to one final, highly provocative thought regarding a concept the authors hint at. It's called Jiva Samadhi, the theoretical state of deathlessness.
Right. We established that deep sleep physically forces your consciousness into the 0D singularity, stopping subjective time entirely so your higher dimensional anchors can execute massive thermodynamic cellular repair overnight.
Yes.
So, what would happen if a human being figured out how to consciously hold their mind at that absolute zero dimension while remaining fully awake?
If the 0D state is the ultimate biological engine for reversing entropy, and you could access it without turning off your prefrontal cortex or losing consciousness.
Could that continuous flow of zero-point energy be the biological key to transcending physical mortality itself? We started this deep dive talking about the rigid, comforting division between looking through a telescope at the distant stars and a microscope at our own biology.
Right.
But maybe the ultimate secret to human life isn't found by looking through either lens. Maybe it's found by closing your eyes and realizing that the void you see in the center of your own pupil is the exact same void holding the galaxies together.
A zero-dimensional point, holding infinite potential.
Something to think about tonight as you drift off into the singularity.